Well, hello again, everyone, and it's good to be back, and I hope you've had an extremely productive day. But it is really an honor for me to introduce Secretary Foxx, because I think in this arena and many arenas he has truly been a visionary. Anthony Foxx became the 17th United States Secretary of Transportation on July 2nd, 2013. At the Department of Transportation, Secretary Foxx leads an agency with more than 55,000 employees and a budget exceeding $70 billion. The Secretary's primary goal is to ensure that America maintains the safest, most efficient transportation system for this generation and for future generations. In 2015, Secretary Foxx refocused the national dialogue about the future of transportation by releasing Beyond Traffic. This report examined the challenges facing America's infrastructure over the next 3 decades. This draft framework has already influenced decisions by elected officials, planners, and stakeholders nationwide, and helped secure the passage last December of the FAST Act, a 5-year reauthorization bill for U.S. surface transportation. Secretary Foxx has also energized the DOT's embrace of technology and innovation. In December, the Secretary launched the Smart City Challenge, a national competition to implement bold, data-driven ideas that make transportation safer, easier, and more reliable. The Secretary has also worked to accelerate the introduction of connected vehicles, announced support for the development and deployment of autonomous technology. Secretary Foxx joined the Department of Transportation after serving as the mayor of Charlotte from 2009 to 2013. And as mayor, he made efficient and innovative transportation the centerpiece of Charlotte's job creation and economic recovery efforts. Secretary Foxx is an attorney, and he has spent much of his career in private practice. He also worked as a law clerk for the U.S. Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, a trial attorney for the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Justice, and a staff counsel to a U.S. House of Representatives committee. He received his law degree from New York University School of Law and a bachelor degree in history from Davidson College. So it is with great pleasure I introduce and ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to please join me in welcoming the United States Secretary of Transportation, the Honorable Anthony Foxx.
Thank you, Mary. So nice of you to do this. Thank you. Thank you, Mary, very much, and good afternoon, everybody. It's good to be here in Detroit, and I want to thank Billington Cybersecurity for hosting the first ever Automotive Cybersecurity Summit. And I also want to acknowledge a very important member of my team who's been here participating on a panel, Dr. Mark Rosekind, our NHTSA administrator. Please give him a round of applause for the excellent work he's doing for us. Listening to what Mary just said, I thought I might just take a minute at the outset to talk about what we've been doing at the US DOT over these last 3 years. In many ways, what we're trying to do is lay a new foundation for U.S. transportation. And unfortunately, when we do many of the things we do, they look like they're in isolation from each other. But in reality, so much of what we've been doing fits into a cohesive idea of how American infrastructure needs to evolve. Whether it's pushing hard for the first long-term surface transportation bill in a decade, or standing up an innovative financing center within the US DOT to help forge more public-private partnerships in transportation, whether it is doing every single thing we can, we'll spend some time on this today, trying to raise the bar on safety, extending it into some areas that may be considered non-traditional, like bicycle and pedestrian safety, in addition to our more conventional focus on automobiles and trucks and airplanes and ships and every other mechanism that moves around the country. Whether it's drawing attention to the country's need to build an inclusive infrastructure, one that invites people in, expands opportunity, creates better connections so that every American, no matter who and where they live, has a real shot at the American dream. These are just some of the things that we have been working towards in the last 3 years, and I dare say we have built an incredible foundation on which these things will bear fruit in the future. Now, there's also another very pressing issue that I want to tackle at the outset here, and you'll laugh about it, but it's actually a serious one, and that is over the last 2 weeks, the level of distraction that is occurring on our roadways due to this Pokemon Go app. You know, the reality is that we work so hard to raise the level of safety. Folks who are driving using this app, or in some cases even walking using this app, can endanger themselves. And I'm very serious when I say that we need folks to be very focused on the roadway when they're driving, and frankly, even when they're walking. And I would just caution consumers and folks out there to not allow themselves to get distracted from what they're doing and get into some trouble because they're trying to find a Pokemon. It's unfortunate you have to say these things, but you do. Okay, so back to Detroit. Earlier this year, at this very conference center, during the North American Auto Show, I announced DOT's efforts towards the safe deployment of autonomous vehicles. And we also challenged our department, along with 18 automakers, many of whom are here today, to take the first steps towards formalizing and committing to the 4 pillars of the proactive safety principles we set out. That announcement and the establishment of those pillars were an incredibly important moment for those of us in the transportation community. Because not only did it represent a new level of coordination in doing what we can to share information and explore meaningful ways to collectively improve vehicle safety, it was also an acknowledgement that as we grow increasingly more connected and move to an environment of greater automation, it will be what the industry does together to secure these innovations that will define so much of the success of this technology. Now, I like numbers. And to perhaps put a finer point on this, in our detailed report, Beyond Traffic, we estimate that the U.S. population will increase by 70 million people over the next 30 years. By 2045, 75% of Americans will live in just 11 megaregions, which as they stand now don't have the infrastructure to accommodate this growth. Compounding that is the fact that we're going to have 45% more freight volume on our roads and our rails and our pipelines and our waterways. And that's on top of the congestion we're going to have just because people are going to be trying to get to their schools and to their jobs and to other places. Another set of numbers that is even perhaps more daunting is the fact that we lost 35,000 lives on our roadways last year. 94% were caused by human error or decision making. And so when you put all that data together, what it tells me and my team is that for efficiency and for greater vehicle safety, connected and autonomous technologies will be the backbone of a new, smarter transportation infrastructure. And that is ultimately why we've been so bullish on this technology and why we are leaning so heavily into it, because we see the potential to save lives. But as you know, cybersecurity and advanced technologies are closely related. The innovations being introduced into vehicles that have the potential to offer safety and mobility enhancements also bring risks that these same advancements can be hacked or misused by those of ill will. And the fact is this, that in the area of cybersecurity, there is no one company that can come close to accomplishing what all companies can do together. One company can't do what all companies can do together to work, collaborate, and build a community of interest around protecting these new systems from cyber attacks. In fact, we will only be successful if this happens. So this is why I'm excited for the work that we're doing to develop cyber security best practices, both at the department and within industry as a whole. And I know you've been talking about the guidance that the auto industry is bringing to the table and what it means for the future of this industry, cybersecurity. I do want you to know that USDOT is planning on releasing our first ever cybersecurity best practices guidance in the near future. We think this document will be the first step in our challenge to raise the bar on security and safety for new vehicle technology. And it will help the entire global auto industry reach our shared goal of securing the next generation of vehicles and automotive technology. But with that being said, I think we all know that we still have a lot to figure out. Since much of the technology is still in its nascent stages, we have a chance to do with cybersecurity what we really didn't have the opportunity to do initially with automobile safety, which is to build out the foundation from the ground up using a consistent approach that can be used across the board. So at the department, we're focused on developing guidance that's broad enough to be complementary to the best practices set by industry and other organizations so that companies can apply it to any vehicle they're manufacturing today. We also aren't creating our own cybersecurity guidance in a vacuum. While we do have some of the brightest minds at USDOT working in this area, we have made a point of seeking out other governmental agencies, academics, suppliers, manufacturers, researchers, to draw on their expertise. We looked at our own work, we looked at existing best practices in other sectors. We held a public meeting in January that more than 300 people attended, and we mostly listened. And we heard so many great ideas and recommendations, some of which have been covered in other best practices shared here today. But one particular point that stood out was having a senior person in each company responsible for cybersecurity as a best practice. This not only creates visible representation of commitment to cybersecurity, it also promotes accountability and a central point of contact within the company, helping to streamline and standardize new processes. We also heard that establishing a culture that proactively tests systems and vehicles for vulnerabilities is standard practice in many sectors. This means having a response plan in place that is continually tested to ensure that people know how to handle issues when they arise is critical. We've all heard one of the great philosophers of the world, Mike Tyson, say that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, which is a not so elegant way of saying that waiting for an event to happen and then dusting off the response plan is not how we're going to avoid failure. So we've been busy looking at all of the input we've gathered to fine-tune our set of best practices in a way that will cover all vehicles on the road, and we're looking forward to sharing those with you very soon. For better or worse, government has a reputation of being a little slow in a fast-moving environment like this, which is partly a function of how fast cyber threats move. But we hope that our guidance, when it is released, will break new ground on how we address cybersecurity for today's vehicles and vehicles in the near future. By timely pooling our shared lessons and announcing them to the public, we are hoping to power new innovations off the ground quicker and safer. And I should say that this is part of a nimble and flexible and transparent approach that I and Dr. Rosekind are both trying to help lead, because we recognize that a lot of this technology is still emerging and that we don't have the luxury of waiting until it is in place to develop systems and processes and procedures around it. And so we consider the work we're doing as foundational, but we also understand that it's iterative and that it will evolve over time. And so we're accounting for that as we do it. So this is basically our approach. But there's another element of promoting safe and smart transportation innovations that will go hand in hand with securing our cyber systems, and that is the handling of data privacy concerns that are also knocking at our front door. I can't emphasize enough how essential data privacy will be to ensuring that we have the safest transportation technology in the marketplace. Data is absolutely everywhere, and the ways we receive it and send it are only going to increase as the amount of available technology increases. So it's up to us to come together and agree across this industry on how to safeguard that information with a solution that makes the most sense and that meets the needs and concerns of consumers across the country. Because ultimately, it is in the interest of industry for the consumer to have confidence that the information they're generating is being protected and that they have control over it. That they're able to decide who gets to have that data and how that data is shared, and the ability to opt out of sharing that data if possible. And through the contours of this space, though the contours are still being shaped, it's also an area that will continue to grow both in its level of importance and the attention it attracts. So these are questions that must be answered swiftly, and we must fight the temptation to put those answers off to tomorrow.
And that's a wrap. Reporting from inside the Cobo Center in downtown Detroit, I'm Jason Rzucidlo for AmericaJR.com.